Devan, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on the show.
Absolutely. So this is great, man. We in the podcast world, we connect through referrals or we connect through, just friends or some of these networks. And you and I are part of a podcasting network. So we get to read each other's, our write-ups, but it's always nice to kind of hear the stories firsthand and those interactions. So I'm looking forward to collaborating with you. I also know that you have a podcast yourself. Just, for the listeners, what's the name of that podcast?
The podcast is called The Mindset Cafe.
Mindset Cafe. So, and you're on the intrinsic mindsets. I love that. So we both have a little mindset focus. So you're in the fitness world, and is it fair? Are you a coach as well then too?
I don't
I
sell
got you.
coaching and I don't promote myself as a coach, but since I have a franchise and I'm selling franchises, I'm coaching my franchisees essentially.
Yeah, coaching or mentoring or whatever that looks like. So,
Right.
where I want to start actually with us too is instead of a lead up, you had a leap of faith in your career path. I actually want to leapfrog our conversation right into there at that point. And if you have to kind of backstep and build it up or anything like that, feel free to just kind of tell your story. But I really love, just the faith and the jump into something you believe in, into something you're secure about, and the whether it's the mentality of the universe has your back, or you are just so sure of your own abilities to master and make it through the storm. But yeah, let's start there, and if you could kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I will back this up a little bit so that the
Perfect.
the leap of faith makes sense. So, before college, I was a martial arts instructor, and going to college, the martial arts, hours didn't work with my college schedule, so I had to transition jobs. And that's what led me, into personal training and getting a job at, LA Fitness, which is a big corporate gym. And I always told myself it's an awesome college job. I can make my own
Mhm.
hours around my classes and so forth. But while I was going to college, I was a business management major, and really that's just an undecided major for majority of people. Some people do get a degree in it that really want it, but majority of people just choose it because they don't know what to choose.
Sure.
And I was one of those, right? So I switched majors once I learned about kinesiology, and I was like, oh man, the study of human movement. I love personal training. Like this would be so cool to learn more about it. And after I graduated, what I thought was going to be a college job was something I was truly passionate about, and I thought I could make it work. Meanwhile, I was, being told by my dad and my mom, that I should be getting a job that has it as a career. So I was trying to become a firefighter and, do that whole spiel. And that's because my parents were, essentially both, W-2 workers, and that's just what they
Sure.
knew, and they were doing it out of love and carrying this. But I realized that for myself, that's not something I wanted to do, so at a certain point, I basically was like, I'm going to make personal training work. Now, that's not the leap of faith. The leap of faith was I was working for a privately owned gym, and me and the owner got into a disagreement because even though I was the top producer in the gym, I wasn't reading the scripts that he was giving because they didn't work for me. It wasn't authentic to me.
Hmm.
Right. And so even though I was saying the same words in a different way, he was getting upset, even though I had the biggest numbers. So essentially, I told him, you know what? I quit, and in doing so, I didn't have a backup plan. Right. So
Mm.
my thing was, I've been telling myself, like, I'm going to start doing this on my own. I'm going to start, my own personal training company. And that little push was like, you know what, this is my leap. I'm gonna go for it. I called my girlfriend, at the time, who's now my wife, and I told her, like, I quit. And she's like, quit what? And I was like, I just quit my job. And she's like, so what are you gonna do? And I was like, I'm just gonna personal train on my own. And she's like, how are you gonna get clients? And I was like, I don't know yet, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to figure it out. I will stand in front of, the Vaughn's grocery store and promote myself if that's what it has to be. But I refuse to keep doing this thing when I know I can do it. And so that was the first leap of faith that I took in really entrepreneurship, building up a personal training business, and not an online business. Like, this is a in-person only. I didn't have a social media presence, and I built it up to six figures, and I was comfortable, right? Working 12, 16-hour days, loving it.
Sure.
And then it was like, I got to a point that I had to take a second of faith, and it was like, okay, well, what's next? Every trainer tells everybody that they're going to open up their own gym one day, but only a fraction of them actually do it. And
Hmm.
so in order to open the gym model that I wanted, and we can dive into this in a little bit, but in order to open up the gym model that I wanted, I had to bootstrap a lot of it with my business partner, which meant I had to drop a lot of my clients, as clients, and now they became members
Oh,
to the boot camp. But that meant my income now dropped. And essentially my income now is tied to the gym and to the profit margins and so forth. So
yeah.
even though I'm still making money, it wasn't six figures, on day one. So that was the second leap of faith, and then now we're on the third leap of faith. It's, doubling down and now tripling down, now launching the franchise company that we did last year. It was like that actually was more expensive than opening up one of our gyms, was to
Oh,
invest
God.
into mentors and everything. And
Yeah.
so doing that, but now after 13 months of calling and doing presentations and stuff, we actually got our first franchisee. In about 2 weeks we'll be signing on 2 more. So it's like,
Oh, it's
everything
outstanding. Yeah.
everything's starting to work out. But that was my leap of faith, was knowing that the only thing that's stopping me from achieving these things is myself.
Yeah. That's phenomenal, man. Thank you for sharing that. So there was a couple different things. And one was that we'll call it that second leap of faith, if that's fair, where you
Mhm.
actually dropped clients. So, I mean, that's incredible, because when people go into the entrepreneurial world or kind of go all in, and it's not a side hustle anymore, it's a primary, to actually forego, I think most people end up burning the candle at both ends and just, stringing themselves out and they'll thin out their personal resources. And, I kind of look at any new initiative or entrepreneurial endeavor is, the three big pools are obviously time, money, and then the third I say is like kind of an emotional, mental capacity to endure, to weather the storms, to to keep going. Because if any of those tanks drain, you could really set yourself up for failure. And even if if two of them go, you're probably out to sustain that. So for you to be able to take a calculative step back like that, just to take a bigger leap forward, that shows discipline.
No, thank you. And I mean, it's one of those things where there's different personality types. And I think that's why, people say, 95% of businesses fail. It's like, I think that there's a statistic to that is true, but also there's the margin of people don't realize how hard it is. And so
Mm-hmm.
they want to become an entrepreneur. They want to start a podcast like we both have, and they think it's easy. There's
Yeah.
work that goes into it. Like you said, it's time, it's money. And then your third one was emotional. My third one's also, effort, right? So there's a
Mm-hmm.
cost to anything that's valuable in life. And if you're not willing to spend that cost, then,
Yeah.
you're not going to achieve it.
Yeah, and it is interesting too with the percentage of you see it a lot. People get kind of the typical story would be like, all right, they're in a position they currently now, and then they see the owner of the company. The owner of the company maybe have been doing this for decades, have worked through the kinks and worked through all the pains and the long weekends and the late nights, and you'll see some employee go like, well, I'm making this guy all this money, and I'm going to start my own company. And the reality of when you start your own company is it's not less time, it's double the amount of time and you're personally invested, and it's a completely different, I'm just going to use, because we kind of started with mindset, it's a completely different mindset, and you start to play a different game. And I will kind of interject, there's a lot of different games you can play, but there's kind of playing to win, and then there's just playing not to lose. And when it's your money, your time, and everything, I've seen a lot of people kind of retract in, even very bold, courageous people retract and kind of play just not to lose. And when you're playing not to lose, you're not showing up, with your full potential. You're not showing up with that high energy level. And it's easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis, or too concerned about what the world thinks, or the potential failures, which has to be overcome. And it kind of leads me into something that I read through some of your information, and, kind of fail forward or fail fast. So if you could kind of add into some of that thought train of even, failing up, failing forward, failing fast, what does that kind of mean to you?
No, yeah, definitely. And I will add on to what you were saying of when things are tough and you're playing with your own money, not playing with house money, people start to retract in or become very protective of every little move. When in
Yeah,
reality, if they were playing with house money, they'd be making different moves. You have
they
to
would.
realize that if everyone else is selling, you should be buying, right? And you have to have that own mindset. If you know what the path is, but you're making a different decision just because you're scared of losing the money, you're going
Yeah.
to end up losing the money either now or in the future because you're not willing to make the decisions you need to make. But
Yeah.
going into failing forward or failing fast. I don't really believe, I know we were talking before this and you don't really believe in the word failing, and neither do I. I like to use the word failing because so many people think of failing as losing. I think of failing as I may have failed this one attempt. That doesn't mean that's my last attempt, right? This is just a path that didn't work. Like Thomas Edison didn't build the light bulb in the first, right? There's so many different things, so many different ways, so many different times you could try. It's like you just learned a life lesson. The life lesson was this way doesn't work. Or
Yeah.
maybe this way didn't work this time. I need to do a little bit more, I put a little more effort in and then try it again. Right. So failing fast is, more in the business sense, especially. It's like sometimes you need to try things out. And if you're trying things out with a scarcity mindset, you're
Yeah.
going to fail slowly. And the failing slowly is going to be a lot harder and a lot harder to come out of than if you, let's say, marketing, you want to try a marketing campaign, throw it out there, put a higher budget on it, try it for a few days, no one bites, take it down, revamp it, put it back on, and see what starts to click. So sometimes you just need to take action. And if it doesn't work, you adjust, you pivot, and you keep moving forward.
Yeah. That's so a couple different things. One is I really do like how you kind of nailed if you fail slowly or you start to decline slowly and you don't create inaction around it, or you just think that maybe you start living on a hope and a prayer. And that actually is one of the things where I was talking about the three tanks, is that kind of, if those go down, you're not working on disciplines, you're not working on processes, you're working on hope. I
Mm-hmm.
hope this next sale works. And once you start working on that, now you're just externalizing within the power sets. You're not controlling, you're being reactionary instead of driving it, which is actually too, as well, with the emotional capacity. That's where some of those things come in, where you're making emotional decisions. If you feel desperate or you feel lack, to your point, you're going to make an emotional decision rather than a logical or a process based decision as well. And those all kind of key into that. So there's another thing that you put out there as far as like discipline over motivation, how to stay consistent. And that's a nice segue into there, because I had just mentioned that as far as processes go. Elaborate on that track of discipline over motivation.
So people like to think that discipline and motivation are different. The difference comes from motivation is fleeting, happens and then it goes. For example, let's say you read a quote and you feel inspired, or you watch a motivational clip of your favorite actor doing something and you want to go do that, right? And then tomorrow you don't feel that same feeling, right? That's motivation. Where discipline is doing what you need to do, even on the days you don't feel like doing it. Because I guarantee, I'm in the fitness space and I can tell you right now, I do not want to work out every single day, right? I don't want to work out 365. Most of the days I have other things to do and I still work out because I know I need to do it. And then once you get going and you're in the gym, you do your first set, then it's like, okay, I want to be here, right? But that goes for a lot of things in life, right? It doesn't matter whether you feel like doing it or not. If you have a goal, if you have a dream or a vision, whatever you want to call it, if you have that and you take daily actions towards it, regardless of your emotion, because your results don't care that it's the weekend. Your results don't care that it's December 31st or January 1st. All it cares about is that you did what you needed to do in today. Right. And that's the main thing around it, is like discipline is this basically the bricks that you put on top of each other to your goal. Motivation is just that little boost that you get. It's a little energy shot or a boost of adrenaline, but it comes and goes.
Yeah, kind of chasing the dopamine, the rushes. And, we all chase desires, that's part of the human. But to create that true lasting motivation or become incrementally better each day, that discipline is, and I think we're all capable of it, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It can be easy to get distracted. We can fall off our horse. And, that motivation, we're going to question it. Like you said, too, like even with, the working out thing's a great, just a great way to kind of visualize that for people, because there's a physical attribute to it. But what I think, when you're kind of in the games of the mental states, sometimes it doesn't feel as clear. And, to continue to maintain those emotional and mental capacities. And I don't mean to keep driving that kind of point to bringing it to the surface, but to show up every day and continue a motivational discipline or a process that is similar and replicable, like to the point where you said too, it's like, there's that dopamine or that adrenaline high. That's not something you're going to produce every single day. Otherwise it will deplete somewhere else in your life if you're trying to, chase that kind of like that junkie chase, chasing the dragon. And so, in that space too, I mean, do you kind of have some advice? Maybe there's somebody's been kind of struggling with some of those motivations or those disciplines, or whether they're starting out or whether they've been kind of doing it a while, and maybe there's just kind of a little bit of a burnout.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I will say that, adding on to what we were saying, is like there's nothing wrong with using motivation, right? There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with using that as an aid, right? So motivation can help as a catalyst to your discipline, but it shouldn't be you only do things when you are motivated, right? And so going into what people should do, or what people should start thinking, or changing their perspective on, is why did you start doing this, or why is this your goal? Right? Because there's nothing wrong with chasing a desire, and chasing something that's short term. That's fine. We're all human. But what is your actual goal in your life? And
Yeah.
with that, you have to think, why is this my goal? What is this going to do to how is this going to change my life for the good? How would this change my life negatively if I don't achieve this goal? Right? For example, like with the gym and with everything we have going on here, one of my motivating factors, or the reason why I stay disciplined, is because I want to leave an imprint and impact as many lives as I can. That's more surface level, but also I want to help change my family's life, right?
Yeah.
And can give them the life that they want. So my daughter, my wife, like those are my motivating, factors. Those are my why. But on the other side of the coin, that also keeps me going, is if I don't do the things that I'm saying I'm going to do, I have employees, I have franchisees that are looking to me to do the things that I need to do. Right. And so one of my whys is not letting them down, not failing them. Right.
Yeah.
So you can have two sides to the same coin. You just have to understand, what is your purpose for doing this. And if you don't have one, you could tell everyone, it's, because you want time freedom and you want, to look good in a dress, whatever the surface level thing is you want to give people, fine. But you need to know deep down in yourself, what is the true reason? Why, like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you need to do this? Because once you can use that, that's what's going to give you the discipline, right? Like, I'm not the most skilled person in the gym or in the business space by any means. Like, I'm not that kind of delusional, but I know that I will outwork anyone that is in my competition. Like, I have built that self-confidence in myself, and that's only been done through repetition of the leap one, the leap three, and knowing that I can do that. So if you don't have the self-confidence or the self-belief in yourself right now, that's okay. That comes in time, right? You trusting yourself comes in time. Just like you don't trust people that you meet off the street right away, but over time you've built that relationship, just like you need to build that relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You really touch on something really deep there too, because there is a sense of belief patterns, which I'll kind of talk about in a sec here. But that compound confidence, the proof of concept in there, how it's incredibly powerful, the compound effect. And beliefs are kind of a interesting thing as well too, because I think it's not as binary maybe as everybody thinks, because you can break it down into a few different things, and everybody kind of has a little bit different view on this. But one way I'd kind of articulate it is, I think that there's a belief that, like, is this possible? Whatever the desire point is, I want to start a new business, I want to create a new venture, some philanthropy. Is it possible? Period. In this world, is it possible? Like, says somebody done it? So I'm taking it very broad, general. Okay, yes, it's done. It's possible. And then there's the belief of, is it possible for me? Like me as an individual, the royal me, and is it, if that point, if you have like a visceral reaction or a gut stomach, there's something there. There's a blockage, there's a potential block. But then maybe you do believe it's possible for you. But then what's your self-worth? Where's your value in there? If you don't really kind of value yourself in those capacities, you're still going to have some conflicting things within yourself, within your subsets of going forward within that belief. But the way you can overcome that is what you just said, is showing up, being consistent, proving to yourself, how about this? We'll use the word fail, the perceived failure or the hurdles or the setbacks. And if you can plow through those or hurdle over them, crawl under them, go through them, whatever version of that is, even if it's just a little bit, even if it knocks you on your butt, and you come back the next day and you do it again and it kicks you in the butt, and knocks you down, and you keep, and then eventually it's, there's a lot less resistance from those compound effects.
No, definitely. And I think, Jocko Willings was in an interview and he was telling this story, and he was a a Navy SEAL, and or yeah, I
Mhm.
believe
Yeah,
Navy
he's
SEAL.
great. Jocko's great. He's like tough as nails, but he's also just articulate and he just tells it like really direct. His communication's great. But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was telling this story that, one of his guys were coming up to him and presenting a problem, and he would just look at him and say, good, and then
Mhm.
they'd be like, okay, they'd go do whatever they needed to do. And then problem after problem, he just kept saying good. And then finally the guy walked in and said, we need to go do this. And he was like, but you're just going to say good. He's like, why do you always keep saying good? And he's like, because good. It's a time for us to grow. It's a time for us to get better, right? So every
Yeah.
failure, setback, obstacle, again, however you want to look at it, those are all times for you to become the person that you need to become to achieve the things that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
Because while you may not believe that you can achieve them now, maybe that version of you can't achieve it now, but that's okay. You're going to continue to grow and you're going to become the version of you that will be able to achieve those things. Like I didn't, when I first opened my gym, or actually when I first launched my personal training business, I was not the version of me that would have been able to run a franchise, right? But it's
Mhm.
daily steps, right? You didn't learn how to, run first. You learned how to crawl. So it's like you just got to think it's one step after another. And the way I like to put it is it all begins and ends with your mind. So if you believe that you can achieve something, then you can, because you're going to work at the things and take opportunities that lead you towards that. But once you believe that you can't achieve something, then you can't, right? Because
Mhm.
you're going to always look at it as a problem and you're not going to look for the solutions of how to continue moving forward.
It's like reminds me of the Heraclitus quote of "No man walks it through the same river twice because it's not the same river and you're not the same man." And I do love that Jocko. I've heard that quote as well too. And so with that too, it's kind of there's a book that's I can't remember the author, but it's like Go for No. And I think a lot of people associate it with like a sales context, but it really just translates across life. Is you're going to get the no's. You're going to get no more no's than you're going to get yeses. So when you go for the no's, you're going to work through some of those pain points. You're going to work through either embarrassments or concerns with what the world thinks or how you're showing up or whatever. And eventually, you're going to get your yeses. It doesn't matter, at some point if you show up and continue and push through. It's really cool because sometimes with these, I veer off for 1 second with the podcast. You don't always know where these conversations are going to go, but man, we are just pounding through perseverance, and I love it. So, it does real powerful stuff when you're really kind of just getting going at it. But so yeah, if you go for your nose, you're going to get them, and you're not getting knocked back. You're not letting them get you knocked down about it. There's such a concern in this world a lot of times with what the external world is going to think of us. So you need those strong proof of concepts and those great foundational proof of concept again, or the belief systems that you won't be affected by it.
Right. And I think it is so true. Like the perseverance is the biggest aspect. Like realize that your journey and someone else's journey are not going to be the same. So don't
Mm-hmm.
compare your journey, the length, the effort, the difficulty to someone else's journey, because they're not going to be the same, and that's okay. But I will say that, you know, let's go with, baseball, switch it up a little bit. Baseball analogy, Nick, no one bats 1,000, but you're never going to hit a home run if you don't step up to the plate. Right. You have to realize that if you're in a scarcity mindset, you're never going to look for those opportunities that are going to lead you to the life that you want. And if you're not stepping up to that plate, again, you're just going to stay stagnant, and then you're just going to be unhappy with what you want. But you have to realize, even if you step up to the plate the first time, you're not going to hit a home run. You may if you're lucky. But again, what is luck? Luck is just you being at the right place at the right time because you've been looking for the opportunities. You
Yeah.
create your own luck, and your luck is just your reality and your perspective on life.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of brought in sports. Just sports are always got a great analogy metaphor for like a team structure too. And
Mm-hmm.
you had actually mentioned kind of that the creating the dependencies of the people that are around you, the franchisees, the employees, the partners, and everything else to a family. So there. I have to, admit, me personally, and earlier in my career, in my entrepreneurial journey, I was kind of the lone wolf, and I took on too much of everything. And it was, and I still look back to this day, and I don't know if it was because I didn't trust anybody, but it was kind of that mentality of like, it's going to take me 20 minutes to explain this to you, and I can do it in 10. I'll just do it instead of delegating. And as entrepreneurs, we do fall into those. We do do that stuff. And now because there is the other side of it where you're delegating the snot out of everything and you can kind of burn through your resources. So there is a little bit of a balance that, especially in the beginning, because we do have to carry many hats. We have to kind of burn the candle at both ends. It is a cost there is a price to pay for that entry and those entropy points or those initiant points. But coming back to kind of building a team, and have you found that like I said, admittedly, I wasn't the best team builder in the beginning, but did you find yourself to be in a pretty good team builder? Or
I think my start was a little bit different because I did have a business partner, but me and my business partner didn't come in with the same knowledge, meaning that he had a W-2 job. He was a physical therapy assistant. And so he was actually one of my clients. I helped him in a 12-week time span to get ready for a bodybuilding show. He started walking down the similar path to what I was doing on the side. I was like, hey, this is my vision. He had a connection with an investor. I was like, look, if you can get the sit down and if you're willing to jump on board with me in the vision, we'll 50-50. When we bootstrapped it, it was just me and him in the beginning. We didn't have employees. Still did all the same things I would do with a manager and stuff. When I went to launch the franchise side, he stayed in the gym and helped build the team. That's when a real lesson hit. I had so many hats on and was trying to juggle so much so that I didn't overwhelm him or the trainers. I was burning myself out trying to juggle everything. And the gym took a little bit of a dip, when I left. And it was because there was things that I was doing, just naturally and not realizing that wasn't common sense or common knowledge. Yeah. So then me and him had to sit down and stuff. And that's when I realized that common sense or common knowledge is only common to the person that knows it.
Yeah,
right. So,
great. Yeah.
So then that also helped us build the systems for the franchise and, continuing till now. It's like things that when he has a question or when the team has a question, they bring it up, we can create a new system around it. But now I would say fast forwarding to today, we have a manager in place, so it goes like me and my business partner, then our managers, and then our team, and then the franchisees and their teams. Over time, I was able to delegate more, and I still delegate stuff as people are ready for it. I mean, I still am wearing a lot of the hats, but it's wearing the hat to create a process around it because I'm still in the creating phase of a lot of things. So it's like, I don't want to hand something off that I'm not 100% sure on how to do it yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a time and a place for that kind of thing too, and making sure that you're handing it off to the right person and you're not making someone else just wear a bunch of hats just because.
Yeah. Well, honestly too, is I can speak from experience as well, is when you're in that creation mode or you're building it, honestly, some of that iteration and figuring it out and kind of tinker with, that's fun. That's some of the charge that entrepreneurs we get, to be creative, to create something from nothing in a sense, and that is really some of the deep down joy and fulfillment within that, because you feel like you're making progress. You feel, there is the fulfillment of the creation process too in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I say, yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, my first leap was going personal training and not following scripts was that real light to that, because I saw my own way to do it and not being able to do it my own way. It was something that I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this for other people if they're not going to let me do what I want to do or try what I want to try at least, so I do agree.
Especially if you're willing to. Not everybody is willing to, and not everybody, the path is not for everybody. And I'll be honest with you too, is I hear the word script and I just cringe, because there's nothing worse than receiving a script from somebody, meaning like you're sitting there in some kind of, put it like a mid to low weight sales situation, and somebody's just scripting you and you're like, I'm kind of thinking about this, and then they go into some default script. It's almost insulting as a potential customer too. And so I personally, like when you said script originally, I was going to jump on that, but you were kind of, we kind of jumped into some deeper stuff. But yeah, the script stuff, man, I just, there's got to be a better way, because you got to, you find the authenticity within the individuals and their levels of communication, their levels of delivery, because you're harnessing their power. We all have superpowers of communication or engagement or human connection. And yeah, somebody who's in a leadership or a boss role or manager role or whatever that is, if you can help to develop what's the best for your employees as them as individuals, holy cow, that's when you really do become unstoppable. But a couple of quick things before I jump in, just keep going with that, is that it was interesting to hear you talk about there was a vacuum once you pulled yourself out of the gym role. Mm-hmm. There was a vacuum collapse. And what was that? You kind of quoted something, or you gave a great line about the common sense, or they're only common to the person. What was
Yes.
that line?
So that it was a realization that I had, and that it was common sense or common knowledge is only common to the person that knows it.
That's genius. That's absolutely genius. And it really is true because so much of the genius is in with the mundane and our levels of engagement. But then you try to go, I mean, not you in particular, but then we try to go to explain it to the next person. And I'm like, well, it's so simple of what I do, but it's really the depth of the mindset that you have. There's a belief pattern. And a lot of times too, if it's a little complex, we'll carry these, I'll call them decision trees. Like if this, then that,
Mhm.
if the response is this, then I kind of go this and I kind of do that. And you're like, that's just so easy. Just do it, and it's hard to pass on. And then one other thing too, you were talking about your partner in there, which is really cool because not everybody, I mean, there's a lot of people that build stuff on partnerships. So don't get me wrong. But I think to find somebody who's playing the same level, we'll call it, of game. So some people will play small ball.
Mhm.
And when they're playing small ball and you have the big vision and you're like, let's go for the big vision. When people are playing small ball, they get very coveted over stuff and they squirrel away. And then it's, things are, people are out to get me. And, they're, and it's, they're just because the game is too small and too compact in there. And there's the different character traits within building those teams or finding the people with a similar level of vision. It doesn't have to be the same one, or it doesn't have to be the same drivers, but at least the capacity of those visions and the seeing the big picture.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, not I've heard of horror stories with business partners and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
me and him had an agreement before everything was like, look, because me and him are good friends too, through personal training and stuff. And I was like, look, I can separate friendship and business partnership. Like I could
Mm-hmm.
talk about business and then be like, okay, is that it? Yes, cool. And then all of a sudden we can BS and do everything else normal, and I can put the two different faces on. I need to make sure that you can do that as well. Because if we need to talk business, we have to talk business, handle what we need to
Mm-hmm.
handle, and then we can go into doing whatever we're doing. And so that's something that we do work really well with. And I think that business partners can find a sense of struggle or resistance when both people have the same qualities and they don't have different qualities that complement each other. Like
Yeah.
me and him are pretty much like yin and yang, like, so
Nice.
I'm a little more straightforward where he's a little more passive. And so we complement each other in different ways in that sense. And he is definitely a lot more of an integrator where I'm a lot more of a visionary. But
Mm.
I'll be the integrator as I need to be, so that I can basically give him not a script, but again, a template. Even for touching back on the script thing real quick, even for us, like we don't have sales scripts, we don't have phone scripts, I don't have any scripts, because it's not authentic. And if I try to sell the way my business partner, my managers, or any of my trainers sell, I wouldn't sell a single
Yeah.
thing. Right.
Right.
So we give templates like, this is where you need to start, right? Give them, do the weigh in, and then
Yep.
you're going to transition to here. However you get from A to B that's on you, you know,
That's
and
awesome.
so
Yeah.
that's just how we do things. So, but my business partner is definitely more of an integrator. I'm more of a visionary. So we definitely link up, pretty well on that forefront.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. And it's good that you recognize that because not everybody has enough self awareness always to recognize where their strengths or their weaknesses or, any type of shortcomings and stuff. And I do like the non script mentality. You can have key points.
Mhm.
And I don't want to totally beat up the script idea because, in essence, there are parameters. We'll call them bumpers.
Right.
Sometimes there's the bumper bowling. When you're a little kid, they fill the aisles and stuff. You can create bumpers for people and just be like, kind of just work your way in here, what feels natural. And I think that's really powerful too because employees do need there is some structure around it. They need to know that you're okay within this window. But if we get outside that window, okay, hey, either bring it to us or we got to talk, or like if you just go rogue, at least they know where they're going. But sometimes if it's ambiguous, it's hard for them to keep their orientation and navigate through situations, or they can get lost at sea with that.
Exactly. And it's all through like giving them examples so that they know where you're trying to go with it. So like we have a template, but then in that template, we've written the way I do it, the way my business partner does it, the way our manager is actually our second employee ever. The first one that was a bad hire, on our
Yeah.
part. But he's been with us since the beginning, and the way he does it, all three of us do it differently. So there's, example one, example two, example three, and then it's explained. You don't have to use these, but this is how we do it. So you can let your brain kind of flow the way it needs to get there. Right. So
Yeah,
there's those parameters and those bumpers. Otherwise, if you give them too much leash, they don't know where they're running.
I agree. Yeah. And I think too is that, a part of the employees. I think I can't remember what he said exactly, but like Alex Hermosi,
Mhm.
and I'm sure if you know Jocko, you've watched Alex Hermosi's too and stuff, and he talks about that as far as employees. He's got a very low tolerance for keeping, because there are employees that are either cancerous or that energy will resonate. So he
Mhm.
didn't forget Alex at this point, but at that, if you make a bad hire, there can be a bad hire for a few, a number of different reasons, but some it could just be their attitude, and they're going to show up and just kind of bashing everything, just that negative environment. It really does wear on people. It just erodes the environment. And then there's the people that are just, they're not engaged, or, we could go in a litany of different types of people, and employees. But I think, with hiring too, I definitely like your mindset. I'd like to hear your mindset on hiring, but I was just going to share a little bit. Some of the stuff too, when I'm interviewing people, it's kind of funny. I've got very few rules because I think at this point I've just talked to so many different people from a hiring perspective. But one of them is like, if you can't get through like a half-hour conversation without complaining about everything, what are you going to be like when you're on board? If you can't not complain for 30 minutes when you're in house, it's only going to magnify. Or if there's a lot of demands all of a sudden being done. We're involved in a number of different businesses, but one is a service-based business in the construction industry. And if they're like, well, if I got to go over here, I'm going to leave early, but the customers like me. And, they start like, you're already demanding, like, and stuff like that. So again, I think what I'm getting to is the essence of the mindset of, you know, if you're in a position where you have to kind of show up as your best, what are you going to be later on if you can't even do that? And what are you going to be for the clients? What are you going to be for the other coworkers? And in essence, I believe that there's things you can teach and there's things that you can't teach. And integrity and temperament, being polite, those are some of the things that you can't spend time in business teaching people. You can teach them the nuts and bolts and some of the the tasks and things like that, but at core level, the core human beings. So I didn't mean to go on a long preachy thing with that one, but I would like to hear kind of some of your thoughts on hiring people and hiring team or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for us, like my biggest thing for either hiring team or even actually accepting franchisees on, because that's where like for us,
Yeah.
we're a little different because I've turned down people at the last step from joining the franchise. And as a business owner, that's like counterintuitive. But for me, one of my core values in terms of hiring or franchising is if I couldn't have you at a barbecue at my house with my family, you're not coming onto the team. Like,
Yeah.
and that's something that I hold true, and that's how I told my manager and to my business partner. I was like, this is rule number one. If you wouldn't spend time with this person outside and have a conversation with them, even lunch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they're probably not going to be a fit for the team because we're creating a culture and a community here, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. But for us, our number one thing is communication, right? Because we have personal trainers and we have clients that are looking to transform their lives, and we run a boot camp. So like you need to be loud, you need to be engaging with the clients. And if you can't communicate, so the first interview is over the phone just to make sure that they can communicate over the phone. Because if you can't do it over the phone, you're definitely not going to be able to do it in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second part is they come in, they actually do one of the workouts just to see, not to see how well they work out, but just to see if they know how to do certain basic movements. And then we have a conversation face to face. And then that's where you get that presence, you get that, that vibe essentially from someone else when they're giving those answers. But the number one for us is communication, because I could teach the rest of the skills. I don't care if you have a certification or not, all that stuff I could teach. And I'd prefer actually if you didn't come in all overly confident in your ability in personal training, because I guarantee I'm going to find a handful of flaws and then it's going to be awkward for you. But the main thing is I can't teach you how to talk.
And that's a great point. And it really is, because they're especially in that industry with the fitness, because you're dealing in a very sensitive subject. I mean, it's somebody's body, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not just their body, it's their mentality and how they perceive themselves. I mean, it's very, very deep when you talk about the physical nature in the fitness world like that too. So yeah, if somebody's not sensitive, if they can't project themselves, if they can't lead, they can't properly mentor, and I mean, that could be very damaging. Like that's how you could lose. I mean, very quickly shut down a franchise or a segment of the business if you've got somebody who's half cocked or just off the rails. Or
Exactly.
doesn't have the confidence that, like you said, you actually kind of nailed it too. Even have the confidence in themselves to project what they're doing. If they don't have self belief, how are they going to ask somebody else in a fitness setting or any setting, to believe in themselves, to pass that on and
Exactly.
carry through on that.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest things in the fitness space is like people are already coming in and they're already shy. Like, you know, a lot of people that come
Yeah.
in have never been into a gym, or they went to a big box gym and they're uncomfortable. They didn't know what to do. So you're the expert. Like if you walked into the doctor's office and the doctor didn't know or didn't really want to talk to you, or kind of would never look at you in the eyes, it's like you would want to go back to that doctor, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things for us is like these people are sensitive. They don't tell some of the stuff they tell us to their family, to their closest friends, right? It's almost like, you know, that HIPAA law that, you
There's a
know,
deep
that,
trust. Yeah.
yeah, I tell my trainers that, you know, even though we don't have HIPAA like a doctor does, I was like, think of it in that way. A member could tell you anything. I was like, it doesn't leave you, right? If it involves another trainer and stuff like that for them to help too, then obviously, but otherwise, if someone tells you something in confidence, like keep it in confidence, because that's what builds that rapport. And that's what builds our safe zone for our clients and our members to come here and
Yeah.
want to come here.
Right. Right. So, on the big perspective on the horizon, is there, something that you can share on some of the big, like the big picture goals, or those, those kind of, that I kind of joke and call it kind of that proverbial Super Bowl of scenarios that, you see where you're headed to.
Yeah. I mean, my advice for people with that vision, right? You have a vision, you have a goal, or let's say a vision, right? The difference between a dream or a vision and a goal is a dream and a vision are in your head only. A goal is something that you've taken from your mind and put it on paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, now that's a goal. That's awesome. You could have 1,000 of those. But if you want to actually make that a reality, then you need to break it into steps. You know, I'll give you an example. On my wall right behind me or in front of me, I have basically a calendar that's one sheet. It's 365 days. It has every month and then every day across. And so me and my business partner every year, essentially, what is our goal for the 10 different categories we have? And then we break it into quarterly goals, right? So to achieve our main one. And then those quarterly goals, we break into monthly goals, right? And so we reverse engineer our goal so that it becomes more attainable, right? What's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Same thing for your goals.
I like the way you articulated and broke it down. I mean, I've always kind of envied people that do look at the big calendar and really create those processes. I admittedly do not do it as much. Well, I do it in certain aspects of my life, but not, not across the board. And I'm not saying that you've got it mastered or don't have it mastered. Maybe you do, but I think that we all show up in different aspects of our lives, and some stuff we just nail it, and some stuff we're like feel like a hot mess. And that's part of the process of our human journey, or our journey of mastery. So I don't think it's ever quite perfect, but I do. That's really cool to hear that. Did you guys go ahead and really break that down and kind of re-engineer it on paper, or really kind of break it down to the detail? And then do you feel like you really stick to it, and or does it? I mean, obviously things change, and I guess you handle iteration all right with it?
Yes, I mean, I think that like on the calendar itself, like I will be honest, we don't write those goals. Like I use that as for part of the analogy. The calendar itself for us is more when we first started, we played everything on the fly, and it was like, we should do an event. Okay, cool. And then we forget about planning it, and all of a sudden we already told a bunch of people we're doing an event this day, and it's the week of, and then we're trying to figure it all out. So the
Yeah.
calendar helps us, essentially be like, all right, our plan is to have 6 events this year and basically break those things down. But in terms of our sales and all that kind of stuff, like that's an awesome goal to hit. And like you break into quarterly and monthly, but realize that with any plan, even opening a business, you could have a bulletproof business plan. I guarantee you, when you open the doors, things are not going to go according to that bulletproof
Right.
business plan. So, with any plan in life, doesn't matter what area of life, if any plan in life, your goals and your plans need to be adaptable, right? In terms of length, in terms of what journey you're taking to get there, you need to be adaptable and you need to be able to pivot and keep going. Sometimes you have to take a little detour to keep going on that same road to get to your destination.
I think there can be fixed goals, but there's also, I like to call them just waypoints, just that kind of lighthouse in the distance. So like, I know I want to get there, and I know the wind's going to be at certain trajectories and push me this way for a while, push me that way for a while, but I know that that's where I'm going.
Mhm.
And I do believe that to be able to iterate, to be able to be malleable, to be able to be flexible in the process is paramount. Because if you do become too rigid, rigidity will, like a branch break. That's
Right.
kind of the difference of a pine tree to a willow tree. The willow will bend with the wind and the snow and the rain, but a rigid tree will break at a certain point. I know that's a little binary and a little hard line, but the concept works in that and stuff. So, but then how about specifically for you guys and your big business? Like, do you guys have and if it's kind of a secret, that's okay. But like your franchises, you got a certain number of franchises you're trying to goal set for to sell, or is it really just about the quality of the people and the, is it, and I'm sure it could be even a combo of both.
No, so I mean, yeah. So for us, it's not a secret. So my goal is not to be the fastest growing franchise. Like plain and
Mm-hmm.
simple, my goal is essentially to be the biggest franchise with the highest retention rate, and that's in our FDD,
Oh, that's a
right?
cool goal.
A little bit different, but also for me, the validation of that is because if I'm truly bringing people on that I would have at a barbecue at my house, like then again, those are the kind of people that should be sticking with it and so forth. I'm not bringing people on that are going to be, as you said earlier, like cancerous to the brand and so forth. But for us, we don't have an exact number, because again, just like business, it's an infinite game. So I want to continue to sell. You can sell franchises, grow, and change people's lives, to the point that we can't anymore. Now, timeline wise, we don't have one, but I could say for this year, our goal is essentially to bring on 5 franchisees this year. And the way it's actually set is that I won't sell a 6th this year. So while it is a goal, it is also my limit, because for us to do the things that, our actual goal of bringing people on and having the highest retention rate, I have installed stop points for myself to basically make sure every crack in the foundation as we grow. So, the first 3 are where we're at, and then we'll hit 8. If we hit 5 this year, we'll hit 8. And then from there, it's like we'll do another pause at 15. And then after 15, we should be able to open the floodgates. For us, I want to be in different countries. Like I aspire to be like some of these bigger franchises. And that's my real goal, is to basically do what other people have done and show my circle, my family, that you can do anything that you put your mind to. Like I was a personal trainer, and you hear these stories, like you hear Jocko's story, you hear Alex Hermosi's story, and then you hear the story, but you don't know the person before the story, right? I guarantee
Yeah,
his story resonates differently with the people that he knew when he opened that first gym.
absolutely.
Right. So I want to be that person for my friends and my family that is a real life demonstration of what they see or hear on social media or the internet and stuff like that, so that they know that it's a possibility.
Yeah. So I do want to reiterate what you just said of creating stop points and how important that is, for any young entrepreneurs listening, because I think there's a tendency to supersize everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, I want to grow fast. I want to, just as many as we can. And you can dilute the water. You can thin out the resources, you can thin out your attention, and that will fail a business, because there is kind of a death by success, in a certain light. Might not be the success you're shooting for, but you can over quantity it or over quantify it in that sense. So I think that's absolutely great advice. And I'm really glad you brought that out, because I think that shows discipline. And again, back to the discipline, but that shows restraint, and it shows a real calculated growth pattern. And I think that's good business advice in general. So I really want to kind of commend you on that aspect of it. So I'm glad I asked the question, and you kind of brought that to light. So very cool on
No,
that.
thank you.
So where can people find you? What's the best way if they want to start working with you guys or explore a franchise? I know you're kind of limited on it, but still, if you want to have those conversations, I'm sure. So what's the best way to find you guys?
So, I mean, you can find me and basically the Strive 11 and all the things I have going on my website. My website essentially is just a hub for everything that I got going on. But my website's just my name, devangonzalez.com, DEVAN, Gonzalez, GONZALEZ.
Perfect. Beautiful. And then I'm sure, I always link with, Instagram or any of the other linking and stuff too. So ideally we can connect that anybody can connect that way as well. So man, Devan, thank you so much for joining. This was great. I loved your insights on entrepreneurial and business. I really can't thank you enough on that.
No, I appreciate you so much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.